Alright then, lads, ladies, and those of us who know better. My name is Jackson MTT Kenny, and welcome back to Bold and Bright. I know I said at the end of the last one of these that I was going to be talking about my upcoming project, but that's gonna have to get pushed back by 2 weeks because I want to info dump about historical costuming. Can you blame me? It's cool as feck. Now, I've always had a bit of an interest in it, but not particularly in depth, so I knew I liked the pretty costumes. And I was a huge Barbie kid, and by far my favorite part of every Barbie film was the dresses. That is just how I am built. Pretty things are pretty, and they're fun to look at. But I didn't really look into, specific eras or how things were constructed, because, well, babies' brains aren't really that developed. I was a bit busy trying to find the moray eel section in my animal book. But then, thanks in large part to Horrible Histories, I got a major hyperfixation on, the Victorian era, when I was, I want to say 9 or 10. Combine that with the huge thing I had for the Tudors, and suddenly I was researching historical costuming a lot. Now, we're very privileged in this era. Shocker, someone actually likes living in this year. But we have so much knowledge just around. Even going back 30 years, it would have been so difficult to research this. If you wanted to figure out how these dresses were constructed, you would have to actually find one and do the work yourself, which is obviously inaccessible for people who don't have access to, fancy museums. I'm in Northern Ireland. Most of our museums are for linen, and not even the interesting stuff. Vague tangent, but we're famous for 3 things. Giant's Causeway, the 2 flippin' yellow cranes, and the Titanic. 4 if we're counting the, pesky civil war we had going on for a while there. Ugh. I did not need to open the lid on that Pandora's jar. So let's just say it was a very good day for me when the Ulster Museum opened up an exhibit on historical costuming a few years ago. Even though I did have to drag my dad with me. And look, we're both absolute history nuts, but he's into archaeology and studying warfare, and I'm interested in the people and the costumes. So trying to reach the historical costuming section and trying to drag away this autistic man from the display of Flint. Dad, just go out into a field and look at it. I don't care if it's Neolithic pebbles. There is a Victorian wedding dress on display. We don't find those very often. Oh, this episode is going to be so unhinged. And so even going back to when I was 10, it was a lot harder to research stuff like this. I mean, sure, we had some resources. Again, we had Horrible Histories, and I can never remember who wrote them, but there was a series of books called, You Wouldn't Want to Be on the Titanic, You Wouldn't Want to Be on the Armada, You Wouldn't Want to Be Around in the Irish Famine, just stuff like that. My primary school's library had those, so I read all of them. Learned a lot about radium while I was at it. And before I go that much farther, I want to say that the big word in historical costuming is historical. AKA a couple of decades where being in certain minorities was even crappier than it is now. So, a phrase we use in the historical costuming community is historical dress, not historical values. Do I think that the 1700s dresses are absolutely gorgeous? Yes. Will I also admit that those fancy court gowns were worn by ladies whose husbands owned slaves? Yes. That was nasty as frick, and a chapter of history that we do not get to skim over just to see pretty lace. So, please forgive me for not going super in-depth into the historical context for this. Just slap a big sticker that says, yeah, I know it was a huge yikes and a big dark chapter in the history of humans. Now on to what the modern, less scummy humans are doing with it. I'm also really excited for this because last time I was in my local bookshop, I ordered my copy of the Chronicle of Western Costume by John Peacock. I heard about it on Delightful when she was making her werewolf custom, and you guys, it apparently has over 1,000 watercolor illustrations of historical costumes. Ah! Oh, that makes my heart so happy you would not believe. In terms of my favorite eras, I mentioned again 1700s, so, your Rococo, Marie Antoinette fabulousness. Look, I like when things are dramatics, like the pannier hoop skirts that went out 2 meters out each side. Yes. We'll get to practicality in a minute, let me have this. As well as also 1850s. I also went through a phase of reading a lot of historical fiction, mostly because, I was having a bit of a rough time in the old secondary school, so after school ended, I would nip into the library and just pick up a random historical novel I don't know if it's a thing anywhere except here, but there are, like, walk into a library and there are 10,000, like, cookie cutter books about, like, women who worked in factories at some point in, like, the first half of the 20th century. I don't know why that's such a thing, but it is, and those things are so easy to read that I was stressed all facts. Admittedly, in that time period, I also got the Ron Chernow's Hamilton book and also Song of Achilles, but sometimes the brain no work and you need historical fiction. Let your brain focus on anything that isn't what's actually going on. That was my comfort food sort of novel for a while before I moved quite solidly into fanfiction. And another fun fact about me is that I've always wanted to be an author, even since I was really wee, like taking 2 sheets of paper, folding them and sticking and like stapling them and calling it a book because it felt so nice to have it. I made so many little staple sheet books. And that is still a goal today. I'm working on projects that I think could turn into something, but alas, I am but a chronically ill youth. And getting through the executive dysfunction is really, really hard. And since I read so many historical things, I wanted to write historical things, and of course I had to do the research on that, and I haven't just always wanted to be an author, I've always wanted to illustrate my own books. So obviously I'd come up with a story and I'd have to draw the characters from it, which means I'd have to do research, which means going through a lot of Google images trying to find anything accurate. I've got a feud going on with the Halloween costume industry, A, for being so insanely wasteful and one-use, poorly constructed, reprehensible labor practices. It's a bad scene all around and so unsustainable. Whose bright idea was that? But also, on top of all the moral things, they completely skewed everyone's idea of what historical costuming is. Like, if you go on, like, a website for it and read the description of a costume, it'll say, like, Victorian, Tudor, Maid Marian, whatever. And especially since we're living in this decade, more likely Victorian, Tudor, Maid Marian, flippin' Bridgerton, whatever. All of those eras are quite a bit apart. And if you look at any timeline, you will see that they looked nothing alike. They didn't even have the same dyes for the most part. And speaking of Bridgerton, I've got issues with that as well. Skimming over look, I watched it. It was 2020. What else was I meant to do? But I got lured in by the promise of a period romance. I didn't learn the steamy thing until too late, but at that point I was already invested in the Lady Whistledown thing, so skip buttons exist for a reason. Ugh. I should have probably guessed that I was going to be in for a rough time with the costumes when, like, 5 minutes in, they do the gratuitous corset scene. Oh my god. 2 points about that. 1, corsets weren't around in the Regency era where Bridgerton takes place. That was not a thing. Can you imagine trying to set something in the, like, flippin' 1980s and they come in, like, Victorian wear? Okay? These were, like, quite a few years apart. These are not the same thing. Oh, that drives me mad. So, on top of it being okay, so fine, wrong thing, and they're not wearing the wee chemise night dresses things that go under it to stop your skin from chafing. No wonder the actresses complain about it so much. They are deliberately making these the most uncomfortable possible versions of them. What, for stylistic purposes? I don't know about you, but to me there is nothing attractive about a lady in the wrong costume for that era who is obviously uncomfortable because that is just not the way you're meant to wear those. And the second point is, oh my god, the bloody tight lacing. For the last time, not everyone was trying to suffocate themselves with those things. Yes, there are cases of ladies who took it too far, but if you look at, like, influencers and celebrities and beauty people today, there are people taking it too far today. There is just a thing that some people feel under pressure to put their bodies in a certain way permanently, and that's just not how it works. For the love of God, go look at Bernadette Banner when she talks about stuff like this. I'll give you a hint. It's all padding. Like, look at any pictures of silhouettes would change drastically over the span of, 30 years. These ladies weren't magically changing their rib cages and shoulders every time the new pattern came out. No, padding. That's how it works. Yeah, when it covers all of your body, you can get away with quite a bit. Oh, and there was a second point in that as well. Yeah, enough with the tight lacing, come on. It especially irks me, because this is Regency. The silhouette of that era was a tube. What is was the line like, a waist 2 oranges wide? A, I'm pretty sure that's anatomically impossible, and B, Who's going to be seeing it? It's under the tube dress. The waistline went like right up to under your boob. You would not be seeing anything. I don't know I can't remember the name of the costumer who worked on Bridgerton, but come on. I think by the second series, they just went completely out the window. There's people just running around flipping bras and knickers, and no one cares at that point. I get it. It's like they're advertising it as kind of like a fairy tale. But for feck's sake, even Shrek had better costuming than that. Ooh, I get very salty when historical costuming is on the line. I care! I want more stuff like Emma and Harriet. Like, come on! There are some films films and series I watched only because I wanted to see the costumes. Emmett, Harriet, Gentleman Jack, I only watched those for the costumes. In the outro for this, I'm going to put like the names of a bunch of my favorite historical costumers up because these people need more appreciation, and hand in hand with studying historical costuming, you normally wind up learning a lot about history in general, and the fact that the way we have the fashion industry now is so skewed. I know people who are going out and getting like a new dress for every single event or new shoes. I swear to God, Shein does my bloody head in. Enough with the clothes hauls. This isn't how it's meant to work. We're meant to have a few things that we like and we maintain, and when it falls apart, it goes in the rag basket. I've literally got my rag basket beside me. I use it for mopping up paint spills every 2 seconds. And this is definitely gonna have to be a topic for a future video because consumerism grinds my gears like nothing else, and unless we call it out and discuss it, there are people who are going to keep having their heads in the sand about the humanitarian and environmental cost that comes from keeping a giant goddamn wardrobe full of shite you don't need that is poorly produced. And I also want to mention that I am not someone who can sew. I recently gave away my sewing machine that had been just gathering dust for, oh god, I want to say 6 years, because I like the results and it always looks so satisfying, but just the way that I'm built does not work well for sewing. Like, I hate cutting out, I hate using patterns, sewing needles are too tiny for me to accurately control. No thank you, I'll stick to crochet. Plus with crochet you see much faster results, which is good for my dopamine. Although I think one of my goals for this year might just be to figure out a historical crochet pattern. Do not hold me to that because I don't even like crochet patterns, but it is still better than trying to sew it. And truly, like, the dedication of historical costumers is, I mean, it blows me away when they mention that they spent like 130 hours on a dress. And I think that nowadays, because basically everything is done by machine, we forget the value of work and labor and craftsmanship. I mean, I have it on my list to do a video about how much like the trend with crochet is driving me mad. Like, chain shops should not be able to sell crochet tops for like 20 or 30 quid, okay? Those took hours and hours and hours, even with the speediest of crocheters and the thickest, most impractical wool. That took a while. And you'll see people tallying up just like paying themselves minimum wage plus the hours it took plus the materials. It racks up to hundreds. And people don't want to pay the hundreds because why would you if you could go to Primark and grab the sales and get 3 badly made shirts for a tenner? Like, why? Even bloody charity shops aren't safe. The price of clothes in charity shops have been going up and up and up and up and up as the quality's been going down because of, again, the practice of getting a whole frick ton of clothes, wearing them once or maybe even never, chucking them in the charity shop bin and then going out and getting a whole new wardrobe. Why? After that ramblet, I'm going to have to include the link to that one channel I like that talks about consumerism and cannot remember her name. She was like addicted to online shopping and now she's turned her life around and talks about consumerism and how like predatory the media and the atmosphere around shopping is, that you will spend money that could really go on something better on that quick thing because of like the satisfaction or the pressure to stay with the trends. I will admit, I'm not a fashionable person. I get too tired for that. I am also naturally messy. Everything I own is covered in paint. Like, my shoes, socks, trousers, hoodies, everything is covered in some variety of, like, graphite ink paint. I've given up at this point, and I kind of like the aesthetic of, like, can we make, like, paint punk a thing? And I really could keep rambling on about this for weeks, because I could also include a point about how a lot of what we now consider feminine clothing was originally invented for men. Yeah, I'm pretty sure high heels were like originally meant to be good for horse riding, and since there were a lot of fellas doing horse riding, guess who was wearing all the heels? The Declaration of Independence didn't say that we need to support the queers. Half the people in that room were bi and they were men wearing wigs and heels. Ooh. History has that wonderful way of making you appreciate what you have and also making your blood boil. Right, I really do need to wrap this up now. Frick. Outro. I've got a Tumblr blog where I'll be posting the project that I keep meaning to talk about, and also quite likely some historical costume doodles coming up because I am trying to do a project with that. Woo! No, I can never just have one project lying around. I'm at Blue Bold and Bright. If editing Jackson has done his job right, there should be some stuff on the screen now. This video has turned out so much longer than I thought it would be, and future subtitling Jackson is going to hate me so much. I just know already. Sorry. Also, this podcast releases one episode every 2 weeks. See you 2 Fridays from now. Recording this on the 29th, so happy late Trans Day of Visibility. Woo! Since that's everything, my name is Jackson MTT Kenny, and this has been Bold and Bright.